Hello, everyone. This is Unfound Live for June 17th, 2024. And if you were tuned in and were not expecting this, then you were in the wrong place. But I can assure you, you should stay anyway. I have a fantastic show lined up for all of you tonight. We're going to talk about, I got a couple of Unfound updates. Both are very good. Actually, 3 updates. 2 are very good. The other one, it's just additional information. I have, if you can believe it, I have more Steve Pankey letters. In fact, I got 2 from him on like Friday, and this is once again, I don't know how much of each of these I really am going to read. And then just today when I went down to my mailbox, and you should know that I maybe go to my mailbox once a week, but I was down there anyway, and he sent me 4 more envelopes. So I got 2, like I said, I think on Thursday or Friday of last week, and then I got 4 today. I haven't even, you can see them right here. I have not even opened them yet. So I'll do that, I guess, tomorrow. But I do have the 2 from Friday that I opened. And like I said, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to read either of these. But I want to talk to, if I can talk about them, I will. Whatever I'm going to say about them, we'll see what I can read from them. Also, I'm going to talk to you. I want to cover this topic of a very mysterious song. Yes, S-O-N-G. A very mysterious song, a story that I came across today that I thought you might find interesting. I'm going to talk a little about Rachel Morin, this woman who was murdered in Maryland. Her killer was caught in Oklahoma, of all places. I want to talk to you about Pamela Smart. She's back in the news. Going to talk a little Jon Benet Ramsey tonight. Of course, her murder is still unsolved. Also going to try to get to a story about a jet that's been missing since the early 1970s that has been found recently. And what else do I have on here? And I have a couple of spectacular questions from a couple of listeners as well. So we got a lot to cover in the next 2 hours. And when it comes to this Friday's episode, well, I'll get to that at the end, but right now it's a little teeny weeny bit up in the air, but I'll explain it when we get there. All right, so before I go any further, please, as you are watching tonight, please give this video a thumbs up. Please give the show a thumbs up. If you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, subscribe and hit the little bell button so when the live show does start, like it did 4 minutes ago, you will be alerted. If I upload any videos, you know how I like to do the map analysis videos as companion pieces to the audio. If that sounds interesting to you, you'll be alerted for all of that. Of course, share this with any other true crime people you know out there. That would make sense, doesn't it? And if you want to go one step further, why don't you hit the join button below? And you'll get some things that other people do not. As for what has gone on with me since you all saw me last, my trivia team blew it last Wednesday. We were like, what, in 3rd place going to the final question, and we bet it all on the final question, and we missed it. So overall standings going into the final week, we were 1st, and we've fallen to 4th. Yeah, not good. I mean, we still have a chance, but everything has to go absolutely perfectly this coming Wednesday for us to get back up to the top again, maybe win this season. And we've kind of bebopped really all over the place. We went up to first, we went back down to fifth, we went up to third, to first for a couple weeks, then down to third, back to first. And it's because we always take a lot of chances with that final question. Well, finally, one time, taking that chance hurt us big time. And some teams have passed us up, and I don't like to lose. So I was in a little bit of a mood for a little while last Wednesday night. I take losing at trivia much worse than I do at disc golf, for example, or anything else where I might be competing or rooting for a team or something. I do take the trivia losses not well. But on the other hand, what did happen on Wednesday night was that I've discovered that the host of the trivia, she has become a fan of the podcast. Somehow I don't think I told her. So somehow she found out that I host Unfound, and she's a big true crime fan. So she has started listening. I don't know if she tunes in here on Monday nights for the live show or not. But so during trivia on last Wednesday night, she gave the podcast a shout out. She actually did it twice. She said it in the end. She didn't actually use my name, which is fine, until the second time she did it at the end. But one thing she did not do was name the team that I'm on, because everybody there hates us because we win so much. Now, granted, like I said, we're fourth going into the final week of the season, but out of the 12 weeks, I think we've won 5 of them or something. And there's 25 teams that show up every week. So from that point of view, we're a little bit despised. And so she kept the team name out of it to, I guess, kind of, in a way, protect my identity, I guess you could say. So there's that. And this is not unusual. When we played all those years over at Pat Cats, we eventually got to the point where all the other teams hated us there too, because we would win so much. So that's the way it goes. No matter the location or the format of the tests or the competition or whatever, we always seem to come out on top. And even though we kind of blew it this past week, but what are you going to do? So there you go. And by the way, if any of you want to know what the final question was that we missed, I'll tell it to you. The final question was this: of these 4 countries, which one is the largest? Of these following 4 countries, which one is the largest in square miles? The choices were Monaco, Liechtenstein, Andorra, or Vatican City. Which one of those is the largest in square miles? Not largest by population, but largest in square miles. So we have Monaco, Vatican City, Andorra, and Liechtenstein. What is the correct answer? Like I said, we missed it. And like I said, this coming Wednesday is the final day of the quarter, and then all the results get erased, and we start a new one. I guess a week and a half from now, Wednesday, whatever Wednesday that would be. I guess June 26th. All right, moving on. Changing my eating habits. I finally got around to changing my eating habits at least a little bit. Really, really trying to keep lactose and bread as much as possible out of my diet. And I have to admit, I've been doing that for about 10 days, and I can already tell by looking at myself in the mirror that it's been it's already made a little bit of a difference. And I certainly psychologically, I guess, I don't know, feel a little bit better by doing that, and we'll see if that can continue. So some things that are really bugaboos for me is the problem I have. Like, I love Cheez-Its, which, as we know, of course, that's nothing but, processed flour and everything else. You give me a box of Cheez-Its, it's not going to be around for very long. So I'm having to stay away from that. And the bread, the only bread that I'm eating is like I've had some sandwiches and everything, but that's it. So I'm really trying to stay away from that processed flour type of stuff. And then, like I said, like lactose, and sticking to hard cheeses like Gouda or Colby Jack, staying away from the soft cheeses, which are more likely to have lactose in them. And I certainly have noticed a difference. And then on top of that, all the other things that I have to avoid because my digestive system is so weird. But I'm certainly noticing some changes. So it's always nice when you do something like that, that you don't have to wait a month or something to start, seeing something paying off. Really decide, this summer really got to lock that down. So there you go. So let's see who is in here in the chat. Deborah, hello. Nephew Charles, what's going on? Good to see you. I missed you last week, Charlie. I think you weren't here last week. You probably did something important. Jasmine, one solved. How are you? Lisa, how are you? Kathy, Serenity. Glenn, I got a question from Glenn that I'll be answering tonight. Great question from Glenn. Hazel, coming to us from New Zealand. Suzanne. Marty, there's Marty. Everybody's back. Everybody should know Marty is back. At this point, we can't say where he was. I know where he was, but when the time is right, we'll be able to reveal where Marty was. And one solves that Jon Benet is my jam. Amy, what's going on? Good to see you. Back Light, what's going on? Hello, young guy. How is the? I can talk a little bit about my singing. Sure, I can do that. Light, no problem. Hello, Jennifer. Good to see you, Jennifer. What's going on? Jennifer's tuning in tonight. She says that she actually watches the next day. Charlene, what's going on over there in Ireland? I'm watching all the soccer going on over there, Charlene. I realize that Ireland is not involved, but I've been watching the Euro 2024, really been enjoying that. Deborah has the answer. Wow, that is the correct answer. Andorra, yeah, I'm hoping none of you cheated, but Andorra is the correct answer. We missed it. And so we got 0 points last week. I don't know. Hated it. Lisa, Cheez-Its, yeah, extra toasty. Lisa, I just like them. Just give me the originals. I've tried the Toasties. I've tried like the cheddar ones or whatever the other, like some different flavors. Just give me the regular ones. The regular full fat, not low fat, but full fat. I'm fine. I can see why people like the Toasties, but at some point it just gets a little too toasty for me. Thank you, Hazel. I appreciate it. Oh, you were in Ohio seeing your mom and dad. I didn't know that, Charlie. All right. Dee Dee, what's going on? Good to see you. Trained into YouTube. That's fine. And all right. So Karen, good to see everybody. Good. Thank you all for tuning in. And yes, the answer to that question, what is the smallest of those countries in square miles? The answer is Andorra. And it's on the border between France and Spain. And it's 181 square miles. And in fact, it's way bigger than those other three. And we missed it. Sucks. As for my singing that somebody just asked me about a few moments ago, it's going really, Light asked me, it's going really, really well. It's going really well. I noticed little by little by little, just greatly easier singing of some songs that I couldn't sing just a few months ago. I'm noticing I'm not ruining my voice at all, although I do not do any exercises on Sundays or Mondays because of the think tank and because I do this live show because so much talking. I think that would be too much for my voice. In fact, the worst thing you can do for your voice as a singer is talk. So I've been working on that about an hour or over an hour a day, working it into my schedule 5 days a week between Tuesday and Saturday. And I've really, it's really been going well. And I can see, it's one of those things where you can see it like it's way off in the distance where you want to go, but you can see it's like maybe like climbing Mount Everest. You feel like you're all packed up, you've done all the conditioning, and you have all your oxygen bottles and everything, and you can see the peak way out there in the distance. It's kind of the way, and I'm heading in that direction. It's kind of the way I feel right now. There was a while there where you kind of just feel like you're just trudging through the snow and you can't see the goal. You can't see really, you just know that you're going in the right direction, but that's about it. But at this point, that peak is still way off in the distance, but I can see it out there. And I think if I continue to do what I'm doing, I'm going to get to where I want to go. And it's very lofty goals, very ambitious, where I want my voice to go. And of course, considering many of you know my taste in music and those kinds of singers that are involved in that type of music, you know what I'm talking about when you start talking about Ronnie James Dio, Bruce Dickinson, Sebastian Bach, Jeff Tate, Rob Halford, all those guys. You start to talk about not just elite singers in pop music or heavy metal, or whatever you want to call it, but just elite singers in any type of music. You just pick any opera, anything. They're elite. And it's really, what I'm looking at. And like I said, I can tell you already that just within the last few months, I've seen improvements in my voice, and it's easier to sing certain songs. And right now, for any of you who are really, 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 really into music, in my own, like, what we call chest voice, I can now hit a high C, which would be, for any piano people, that's the C above middle C, which is pretty high for a guy. I can't hold it for very long, but I can hit it. It's in tune. If there are any songs that hit that note, I can sing them. I'm not saying I'm karaoke ready or anything, but I can hit it. I can stay in key. It does. I don't sound like yodeling, or I don't sound like I don't know what you want to call it, a wounded duck or something like that. But it's I can hit that C and I feel pretty confident in it. Now you start getting above that and still really have to work on what we call the head voice. But even on that, it's getting a little better. It's just there's definitely a difference between the two right now. But even getting to a chest voice, being able to hit that C5 is pretty good, for any guy. And you should know a lot of these songs we're talking about, like when we start talking about Judas Priest or Iron Maiden, or if you want to talk Def Leppard, Joe Elliott, of course, you start talking about guys who are comfortable singing at what we would call D5 above, D above middle C, the high C above middle C, an octave and a step above middle C, E5, F5. That's where they're going, and they have a technique to do that. And that's where I'm trying to get to. And you may say, well, it's only like a step away. It's still a distance away, especially if you want to be able to sing it comfortably, consistently, and be able to do it over and over and over and not destroy your voice. There's a certain way to do it. So if you're wondering about that, if any of you know about music and, well, how high do these guys go and everything, that's really what we're talking about. And they can do it over and over and over with certain techniques. Let's see. Deborah's admitting, as far as Andorra goes, it was just a guess on her part. Guesses count, Deborah. One solved, and Kathy saying no cheating. That's very good. Nicely done, Kathy. One solved. I hear you have to learn how to vocal fry to save your voice. Kind of one solved. Really, what good singing up in that range is about is it's kind of a paradox, is that you need air to sing, but too much air will destroy your voice. And that's maybe the most important thing. So a lot of what I'm doing is focusing on, I'll do a day of chest voice. I'll do over those 5 days, I'll do 3 days with chest voice, 2 days of what we call head voice, and going in between chest voice and head voice. And what you're really trying to do is you're trying to get as clean a sound as possible up in that higher range. So when you do hit one of those notes, you don't hear any of that hissing that you get like this. Because that's what a lot of people do when they want to sing that. They're singing in a falsetto and they're using a lot of air, and that destroys your voice. So what you're trying to do in the practicing process is condition those vocal folds to really close cleanly and vibrate, and using as little air as possible and making the sound very, very clean, to the point where if you're singing like an E sound, that it sounds like one of those heart monitors, like when the person's dies and it goes E like that. Trying to do that with your voice and getting it really, really clean and keep going up and up in the range is one of the things that you do. So as far as vocal fry, I know what that is. For me right now, I'm just working on the cleanliness of my voice, really being very, very clear and crisp and concise with the notes. I'm not worried, even though I'm into heavy metal, I'm not worrying about growling and, the distortion and all that stuff. That's not what I'm doing right now. You can get there, but you have to learn how to make your voice very, very clean first, because that's what's going to save your voice, and learn how to use the air as little as possible to do it. You have to remember, when those guys are going to those high notes, you think they're using a lot of air. They're not. They're not. Very important. Serious question. Where does Glenn Danzig fit into the talented singer hierarchy? It's very baritone voice, Rockford. I'm not a huge Misfits fan, but I know more of the Danzig songs. Of course, all the Misfits songs, not too hard to do. But if you're talking about a song like Mother by Danzig, which of course I think is the best known song by him of all time, that goes to a high C, C5. And that's a song I can just about do now. I don't know if it's karaoke ready, but I can just about do that song. I don't know how much of a head voice he has. He has like a baritone, almost operatic voice. I just don't know. If we get him above that high C, I don't know how much further he's going to be able to go, Rockford. I don't know. But certainly, having seen him in concert last year, certainly a great voice, is taking care of it. But the Misfits songs are not what I would call the most dynamic songs that have ever been written for singers. But Glenn Danzig, as far as for me, he certainly gets my respect. Certainly not Bruce Dickinson or some of those others, but certainly absolutely gets my respect. But I would not put him in the Rob Halford, Ronnie James Dio category, But he's known as heavy metal, but really he's more toward punk. And once again, it's a different type of singing. It's generally not as dynamic as heavy metal or rock and roll like Def Leppard or Whitesnake or something. So you have to figure that into. If it had been into a different type of music, he might have conditioned his voice in a different way. That's what I'm saying. All right, let's get to tonight's agenda. Let's go here. For the first time, I think maybe ever, I conducted 2 polls. I put 2 polls out there for all of you to answer regarding the disappearance of Carl Schooner Jr. He went missing from Williams Lake, British Columbia, Canada, sometime end of November, beginning of December of 2022. His father, and to a much lesser extent, his mother, were the guests, and that was the episode that came out this past Friday, June 14th. I asked 2 questions in the discussion group. Poll number 1 was, does Robin know what happened to Carl Schooner Jr.? And the answer, 75% of you who answered that said yes, she does know what happened to Carl Schooner Jr. The second question I asked was, does Andy know what happened to Carl Schooner Jr.? And 100% of you said no. Once again, the people who reacted to the polls, if you're not in the discussion group, please go to Facebook, ask to be let in, and we will allow you to be in there, and you will remain in there as long as you play nicely. So poll number 1, does Robin know what happened to Carl? 75% said yes. Poll number 2, does Annie know what happened to Carl Schooner Jr.? 100% of you said no. Now, in the think tank, kind of the same thing. I don't really think that anybody really thinks, at least the way everything was presented. And as you probably noticed, this was one of those interviews where I had my work kind of cut out for me a little bit. I think that the Schooners are 2 people of few words. And all I can do is do the best that I can. I don't let these things get in the way of covering disappearances. The people aren't as talkative as maybe like Jody Malcolm, if we're going to make a comparison. She, of course, was the week before's guest, and there were several people who complimented her about how much she knew about her mother's disappearance and how clear she was and how knowledgeable she was and everything. That's not exactly the way the interview went this past Friday. That sometimes happens. Everybody's different. And even if they were different people, a different, more talkative or whatever else, would we have more facts? Maybe. Maybe we would. It's just hard to say. But in the discussion group or in the think tank that is conducted every Sunday night, once again, if you want to be a part of that, it's right there on the screen. Support Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound podcast. Kind of mixed. People certainly suspicious of Robin, not as suspicious of Andy, at least the way things were presented. And for me, the blog that I write, once again, at patreon.com, if you'd like to check it out, it's just $2 a month, and you can pay up front and get a discount. I've decided that the thing for me that doesn't still quite make sense to me, and this really drove my reasoning for Carl's disappearance, is that as you heard in the interview, when the Schooners finally did talk to Robin, she claimed that she was still living in that apartment when it caught fire, and thus she had to go live with her father. Fires happen. The issue is that the article written in the Williams Lake Tribune does not say that. It's very clear, and the words that are used in that article are, first of all, it says that nobody was in the building when the fire started, but also that it was vacant. And vacant in these particular circumstances means nobody was living there at the time. This contradicts what Robin told the Schooners. And that is difficult to square. It very well may be that the Williams Lake Tribune got it wrong. Certainly possible. And I've talked about this before, how reporters not used to covering disappearances or fires or things can get facts wrong. It happens. But it certainly does stick with me. And what also sticks with me, it's obvious that Robin was not very forthcoming about the fire. She never even told them, well, they think the cause is this, the cause is that. And also So I have to admit, the way I read things is very much like how people in the first poll read them, that 75% of you think Robin at least knows what happened. Doesn't mean she killed him or anything. Not saying that, but that she most likely does know what happened to him. It very well may be that, she saw him walk off and maybe knew that he was on drugs or something. I don't want to say that possible. We don't necessarily have to go in a foul play direction. Also is always gets our attention, not just mine, but all of yours, is when somebody like a Robin, men too, don't offer up a last sighting or anything. I think this is something, if Robin had done this, I think the Schooners would remember. But as I asked them, they said, no, she really didn't say. She's never, at least publicly, to clear things up, just say, yes, last time I saw Carl Schooner Jr., he was down, I was in my apartment, and he was out in the parking lot. Or an example like that. That's always going to catch our attention too. But we have to remember this is a very new disappearance. You have to remember it's just a year and a half old. And it would not surprise me that maybe a year from now there are more facts. In fact, this disappearance is so new that we have to be very open to the idea that Carl is found alive or deceased within the next year. That would not totally surprise me. It would not surprise me at all. Be great news, of course. But I would not be surprised. Now, it very well may be where he's found and how he's found, and things may be surprising. But if just the general idea, well, yeah, he's going to be found dead or alive within the next year, that would not surprise me, just that general information. Because it's very, very new. And as we've learned with some of these, like Brandon Roberts and some others, we have to keep those things in mind. And so there we go. The disappearance of Carl Schooner Jr. And I wrote about it in the blog, and I wrote about culture. It's one of those things that I've covered enough of different disappearances from Canada to realize, even though in many ways Canada and the United States are the same, there are some stark differences. And what I would say is that Canadians are even more deferential to the police than Americans are. I think that's what I've learned. And I have my criticisms for, of course, some of the guests who maybe been too standoffish, just expecting the police. Well, I thought the police were going to do this, and they didn't. Certainly, we've talked about that enough. My perception is that Canadians do that even more, of course, to their own detriment. And that's the kind of the feeling that I got with the Schooners, but they weren't the first Canadians to make me feel that way. So there you go. So that is the disappearance of Carl Schooner Jr. I, of course, hope that he is still alive and that he comes back to his family very quickly. So moving on, speaking of people being alive, I'm going to go with this story first, being that it's local. And I know many of you, especially if you're tuning into the live show on Monday nights, you're some of Unfound's strongest supporters. You're interested the most in what we're doing here. Some of you already know that Ashley Linden Carpenter has been found alive. This is a local. You remember this was a disappearance we just featured a couple months ago. Can you believe it? Back in April? Or maybe it might have been when I was up seeing, maybe in March when I was up seeing my dad for those 3 weeks, some in that time frame. She has been found alive. You should know that I know some of the details, but really not allowed to make them public, not at this point. If anybody's going to make the details public, that will, of course, be her family. And if they don't want to make them public, that's up to them. But she is alive. She is physically okay. And she was found in the Tampa area. And she is now getting the help that she probably needed back when she went missing. I think she's finally getting that help now. That's all I can say. Like I said, I know more details than that, but that's really that's all I'm at this point that I can say. I think I can also say that, of course, the guy that it was in her life at the time, he had nothing to do with her disappearance. Of course, she's alive. Of course, if he did have something to do with her disappearance, we might think, well, the odds would be that she wouldn't be alive. He had nothing to do with her disappearance at all. Zero. So you can just clear that off. If you're thinking of that he had her, for example, he had her locked away in a cellar somewhere and they discovered that did not happen. He had nothing to do with her disappearance. Okay, I just strike that, just put that off your agenda. That's all I really can say right now. You may be asking, well, is it a coincidence that you featured her disappearance and then less than a couple months later, or maybe around a couple months later, she is found? It's hard to say. There's nothing at this point that there is a direct line from the podcast of her being found. However, this is like, what, 6 or 7, 8 times, at least 7, in the past year and some months that this has happened, where we have featured a disappearance and then like within weeks to a couple months, these disappearances are solved. At some point, it ceases to be a coincidence. Now, I don't know which ones are direct reaction to the episodes and which ones aren't. I don't know. If I knew, I'd tell you. But certainly there could be something going on here. And maybe it's just being wishful thinking that being that this is I live in the Tampa area, quote unquote, that somebody in the Tampa area heard it and discovered, hey, she's missing. Hey, wait a minute. And then things were done and there she was. That's all. I'm hopeful of that. That's exactly the reason we do this podcast. Whether the people are in the Tampa area or not, or are deceased or not, or whatever, this is the reason the podcast gets done. Because once you put things out there into the ether and you do it in a factual way, in an organized way, in a concise way, so that the public has a firm understanding about what happened and all the ins and outs and everything, you make it as possible as you can reach to make these things happen. So Ashley Lyndon Carpenter is alive. Great news. And if one of these days I'm allowed to talk about where she was and how this all went down, I will let you know. I know some of it, but I like I said, I don't mean to tease all of you, but I don't want to ever get the idea that that's the reason I say these things. But when I'm allowed to, I'll say. I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon, but we're all, it's one of those things where we're just results oriented. We're results oriented. Maybe in retrospect, way down the road, because we analyze these things, would like to know some of the ins and outs, but we are results oriented, meaning all we care about, not that we're pragmatic necessarily, we want to get there in a moral, legal, ethical way, but we just care about these people being found. And that's the most important part. She is alive. Kathy's telling me that episode came out on March 23rd. Thank you, Kathy. That was when I was up in Pennsylvania. Amy says, great news. Hazel, my heart really jumped when you said this on the last podcast. So up in here, we don't need details. Maybe the guests get their advice after the show and get even more motivated to stir things up and do so in a different way than they did before. Some might just need the right push to shake loose. Well, I will tell you, given that it's just a couple months ago, I will just go a little bit more into my thinking. There wasn't anything that I heard in that episode to think that the man in Ashley's life had anything to do with her disappearance. Now, of course, being that now we know she was alive, I guess there then is the chance that that was she in that picture that was taken. That has not been, by the way, that has not been confirmed or denied yet. We don't know. That's one thing I don't know. But being that she is alive, I guess it does raise the possibility that it was she in the picture. I will tell you at the time, I kind of rejected that. But we still don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if I could have made, I really did not feel like a foul play scenario to me. I think that's what I wrote in the blog back then. And it certainly could have been that something could have happened to her on the streets of Tampa. But nothing did happen to her because she's still alive. But I think I was at least proven right in saying I just don't know how that guy would have tracked her down on that day if that was she in the picture. It just seemed too complicated for me. And I guess I ended up being right on that. I know some people did think that maybe he somehow tracked her down, or did she call him and he came and picked her up and killed her or something? Obviously, that did not happen. So there you go. Maybe it does, Rockford. Some guests have told me that. I do re-energize them. I do ask questions. I do bring things up and ask questions that they've never heard before. Certainly that does happen, and people do get re-energized sometimes. And given that this is in the Tampa area, and like I said, I kind of know what went down, I guess there is the possibility that the podcast did get to the right set of ears. So, yeah. Robin, this is the first time I've been able to listen to you live. I love what you do. I thank you, Robin. What's going on? Good to see you tonight, Robin. Thanks for making some time on this Monday night. Thank you. All right. In other great news, although this news, I guess we would say in a way is a little dated, it seems that Trevor Nichols is also alive. At least he was alive in 2022. So a couple years from now, or ago. If you remember, maybe I talked about it this week, but I'm just going to talk about it again. You remember that he was supposed to be going to his new spot in Kansas, and he never made it there for being in the military, and there was these conflicting stories about whatever happened, and all these different stories, these fellow soldiers saying one story did a good. Well, in 2022, in San Diego, remember he went missing from New York, Fort Drum, New York. In 2022, a picture of him was taken by a police officer in San Diego. And I posted that in the group. I'm hoping that if you are in the discussion group, you had a chance to take a look at it. And you know how I feel about these things. Going back a few years to when that picture of this guy who was allegedly Cameron Remmer, remember that whole thing? That's still not been resolved, as unfortunately I predicted it wouldn't be. I knew. Sometimes you just get an idea about these things. And of course, the reasoning that I made back then with Cameron Remmer was that would have been a picture that was taken like 10 years after he went missing. And my problem was the guy in the picture looked the same as Cameron did 10 years ago. It's just not possible. He's homeless or doing something, but the guy was clean shaven. He looked fairly clean and all of this stuff. It just didn't strike me as a guy who was living off the grid for 10 years. You should be looking at Cameron Remmer plus 10 years, not Cameron Remmer plus 0 years. And with Trevor Nichols, this is a better example of what was in my head when I looked at that picture of Cameron Remmer and said, that's not Cameron. Whereas you look at these pictures, you look at Trevor around the time that he went missing, and then you see this picture this picture of a guy in 2022, which would be 5 years after Trevor went missing. And you say, oh, yeah, that looks like Trevor Nichols plus 5 years. Doesn't look like Trevor Nichols at the time he disappeared. Why? Because he's been on the streets, or he's been doing this and been doing that and everything else, and living a lot harder life. You can tell. And as soon as I looked at the picture, I said, no, that's not just a guy who looks like Trevor Nichols. That is Trevor Nichols. And in fact, I think he even gave his name to police back in 2022. So if you're ever thinking, this is something that's very easy to get fooled on. When the topic is what people look like when they go missing, and then visualizing what they're going to look like 5, 10 years, 20 years down the line. I knew they do those age progression photos, and I guess some of them work out when people are eventually found sometimes. But I think the biggest mistake people make is they start looking for people, and they think that the missing person like 10 years down the road is going to look like the original picture. None of us look like we did 10 years ago. Especially me with the hair, and I live a relatively clean life. I don't do any drugs. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I stay out of the sun and everything. So I'd like to think that I'm aging about as slowly as I can. I've had no plastic surgery done, at least none that you know about. And not even I look like I did 10 years ago. To be 44 again, or 43 again. So this is the mistake. It's very easy for us to get fooled by that. We're looking, well, that looks like a guy who disappeared 20 years ago. We're not looking for how he looked like 20 years ago. You're trying to imagine what he would look like now. And you see Trevor Nichols in 2022. He has a beard and everything. It's Trevor. Now, how he got to San Diego, why he went there, and I don't know. Given that he was in the military, did he ever suffer from some kind of breakdown? Did he not want to be in the military anymore? Did he go AWOL on purpose? We don't know. And remember, this was a picture taken 2 years ago. So, and why it took so long to figure this all out, and how it even got to Trevor's family and everything, I don't know about all that. I've not had a chance to speak to his mother about it specifically. But we have to remember, it's now 2024. Is he still there? This is one of those tough topics, because if he did have some sort of mental break and he became paranoid schizophrenic or something, and then he gets the idea that people are looking for him, he's probably not in San Diego. So I don't know if his family's going to go down there to try to track him down. I don't know. But I think that his mother was just happy enough to see that he was still alive. And it's, once again, not to pat myself on my own back, but some of you, as I remember, got it right as well. Many of us were thinking, this does not sound like a foul play. It does sound like something else, that he did take off for whatever reason. Didn't want to be in the military anymore. Didn't want to be married anymore. Didn't want to be a father. Didn't want to do something. And this is what he chose to do. Now, the bad news is, of course, if the military tracks him down, there will be some problems. So, but it's certainly Trevor Nichols. Now, that does bring up, and in being that Rockford is in here, because within the last week or so, Rockford has emailed me and bringing up Claudia Wells, kind of the same situation. Of course, that was a disappearance we covered very early on in Unfound's existence. She was in Wisconsin. She went missing. Her daughter was the guest. And there were pictures of a woman who was in Santa Monica homeless that her daughter and other people believed to be Claudia. I guess this then raises the odds that the woman in the pictures, taken years and years ago, by the way, are of Claudia. I just don't know. It's not, I will tell you that to me, it's not as clear cut. it doesn't help that there's a much longer span between Claudia going missing and then these pictures popping up. With Trevor, it's just like 5 years. With Claudia, it was several years. And I realized what her daughter thinks, it's absolutely Claudia. But anytime they've gone down there specifically to try to find this woman, they haven't been able to do so. So I don't know. I don't know if we can make a logical jump and say that Trevor's and Claudia's disappearances are comparable. I don't know. I know that that's what Claudia's family is hoping. I don't quite see it at this point. Roger, I wonder if he landed in San Diego because of a military connection from his past. Obviously, the weather is an attraction for the homeless, but it's full of military too. It's certainly true. Cranky says, I'm in San Diego too. That's exactly why I always look at the obvious homeless young people huddled by the entrances to the stores they go in. You just never know. Yeah. Keep your eyes peeled there, Cranky99 there in San Diego. If you're in the discussion group, that's what he looked like 2 years ago. That's what he looked like 2 years ago. So Ashley Linden alive, Trevor Nichols alive as of 2022, but I'm not sure that we can make the whole long jump to that means that Claudia Wells went missing from Wisconsin and also was still alive in Santa Monica how many years later? I just can't say. All right, but great news. Of course, we want these people to be found alive, and I always hold out hope that that will be the end. But I think we also have to admit, both with Ashley's and Trevor's, them still being alive was a very good probability, given what we knew about them, and then adding in the circumstances. In contrast to maybe a Brandon Roberts, which I think was really a surprise, especially since somebody else ended up having his phone. I'm much more surprised about that one than I am about these two, at least according to me. You may look at it a different way. All right, moving on. Greg, I want to answer your question. It's a fantastic question. I've never been asked this before, and I do have something to say about it. Greg submitted this question before the show started tonight. What causes people to lose interest in a podcast versus others that survive for years? So many factors, Greg. I will tell you the way I look at it, because although I am behind the microphone for Unfound, there are a lot of podcasts or YouTube shows or whatever that I follow. So I have the opportunity to look at it, from both sides of the microphone, from this side and then on the other side. I will tell you that what causes me personally, and I don't think that I'm an unusual person. I don't think that my tastes are unique. I think I have a lot of the same sensibilities as the general population as far as my range of what is acceptable, not just in general. I will tell you, for example, over the past year, there have been certain YouTube channels that I've stopped watching. I'll give you an example, a specific example. There's a guy out there who I think in general is a good guy. His name's Doug DeMuro. He has an automobile channel. And I would say that I did not miss any of his videos for maybe 3 years in a row. Okay, I would say so. But I will also tell you, I haven't watched one of his videos for the last 6 months. Why? What changed? What changed for me, the format of the show did not change. But there were just a couple things. He reviews like unique cars, high performance cars, things like that. And I'm all into that. It just, to me, got a little repetitive after a while, first of all. I can only watch some, and as much as I like, for example, Porsche 911s, I can only watch so many of those videos in a row. At some point, it just all starts being the same thing. Ferrari, I love Ferraris. I love Rolls Royces. Who doesn't? But at some point, it just got to the point where I think I got a feel. It wasn't, each video wasn't unique enough. It just felt the same, like the same thing over and over and over. Whereas, although we covered disappearances on Unfound, certainly every week we are confronted with a new mystery, a new kind of disappearance, a new person, new facts, new location, and everything else. With that, it just started to feel a little monotonous. The other thing that got to me was that although I believe that electric vehicles have a place in our society, I think they do. I think right now, I think it's a little overblown, but that's just my opinion. He was doing all these electrical vehicles and saying how great they were and everything. But then I'm reading in the news how so many of them lie about their ranges, that like the new F-150 Lightning, if it gets cold, you know, all these things. It just felt, it's starting to feel to me when Doug DeMuro was doing these reviews of these electric vehicles, that it was a little bit of propaganda. And that also doesn't help. You know, even though I think he's a good guy, I'm not saying necessarily saying that he's lying, but doing these videos while at the same time ignoring what's going on out here in the real world as a person just kind of gave me an icky feeling. I'm not saying he was doing it on purpose. And I don't think he gets paid, although he makes a lot of money on his YouTube channel. I don't think he's getting paid by the car companies or anybody to say nice things about these vehicles. I really don't believe that. But so that's just an example of it. I'll give you another example. I was also, and once again, I think this guy's a good guy. His name's another car channel, coincidentally, The Car Wizard. He has a garage out in Kansas or something where he brings cars in and shows what's wrong with them and shows what's wrong with cars and everything. There was just something, once again, about the presentation that after a while, I don't know. There might have been a little too much self-righteousness going on in there for me regarding cars and things. So that's why I lost interest in those particular channels. Now, I think they continue to be very, very popular, but for me, they just fell out of favor with me. Whereas some channels that I YouTube channels that I continue to watch over and over, like have to do with plane crashes. I watch this chess channel called Agad Matter, Agadmator, which I think he does a great job. A couple music channels that I watch, Professor of Rock, Rick Beato. I think those channels continue to deliver unbiased, great quality content every time. All right, and so they've not lost my interest, and of course, they're very popular. Of course, I'm into music. I'm into chess. I'm into plane crashes. So, but as far as, the other side of this, Greg, asking, well, what about podcasts themselves? We're talking about why people lose interest. What about podcasters, others that, podcasts that survive for years? Well, I think it just depends how much you're committed to it. Of course, we know there have been many true crime podcasts that aren't around anymore that were around when Unfound got started. Thinking Sideways, Thin Air. Why did they stop doing their shows? I don't know. Maybe they weren't making enough money doing at it. They had their other obligations, other interests. I don't know. But you have to be committed to this. And this is why when I've spoken to other people who, like when I went and spoke at that high school, Largo High School, about just general, talk to them about disappearances, just talk to them about general podcasting. One of the main points I make is whatever you choose to do, it has to be something that you're really into. You can't just be doing it because you think it's going to be popular, because that's not going to get you out of bed in the morning. All right. So I don't know if that's necessarily answering your question. And you should know, being that I run this podcast, Unfound, I do think about these things. In fact, I just had a meeting within the last couple of weeks with assistant Eric and Marty about Unfound and some of the things that are going on and how to approve things. And this is always something that's on my mind. And the thing that hasn't changed with Unfound since day one is that I'm here to serve the guest. All right. I'm not necessarily here. Of course, we want all these disappearances solved, but I'm here to serve the guest. And this is not to offend all of you, but I'm not here to serve all of you. All right. I'm fantastic that you tune in every week. You tune into the live show. I think it's all fantastic. But my job is to serve the guest and to do the best job for them. And hopefully that brings people to the podcast. All right. Because it's very easy. And I know it. I see it out there. I see it in media all over the place, just not in podcasting, but I see it on ESPN, the news channels, and everything else. It's obvious to me that this is one of those the tail wagging the dogs types of situations, where it's obvious to me that these media sites, they determine how they are going to cover the news depending on what they think the audience thinks. Whereas I'm here to tell you, and I love every one of you, when I'm putting Unfound together every week, I'm not gearing it towards you. I don't mean to offend all of you, but I have a job to do. Now, and I hope that the job that I do brings you in. And as I've stated before, maybe not recently, I look at it very much more like the bands and the musicians who I respect. Van Halen, when in their heyday with David Lee Roth, it's not like they ever sent like a poll out to all of their listeners, the buyers of their records and everything. What kind of song do you think we should do next? What do you think the title of the song should be? What should be the lyrics? What key should it be in? You know, on and on. Should they have keyboards? They never did that. They just made their music, and that's what they were going to do. Same way with Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and everything else. That's the way I run this podcast. I have a vision. I'm here to serve the guest, and that's it. Okay? Because I just don't think you can do it ethically any other way. I've told you, the media in the United States sucks because it lets the audience run the show. Everybody is so dang worried that the audience is going to leave that then they never let it, they never let the facts get in the way of the story that they want to tell. That's the way I view it. We don't do that here. I don't do that. And I realize Unfound is not everybody's cup of tea. I can live with that. I can live with that. But if the thing is, when you can, as a host who's creating a program, whether it's on YouTube, a podcast, or on TV and everything, when you start getting to the point that you can't live with people, you want to do the right thing, but you can't live with people leaving your channel, your podcast, your show, you've lost. Okay, you've lost. I'm supposed to be the professional one here. So I have to make the decisions that I think are best. And that sometimes means that people, it's not everybody's cup of tea. And I realize that. And one of the reasons I think that Unfound is not some people's cup of tea is, as Hazel's saying, because we do take it seriously. A lot of people don't want seriousness in their true crime, if you haven't noticed. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So what causes people to lose interest in a podcast? There's a lot of different reasons, Greg. Like I said, I can just talk for myself, and it starts to be when I think the host is compromising in some ways and is saying something that is distinctly different from what I view, the way I view it as the world as a 53-year-old. So, and then others podcasts survive for years just because, as I stated a while ago, when it came to the bad reviews that Unfound got at the beginning, I just figured out at some point those reviews don't determine whether the podcast gets done or not. So I don't read reviews anymore. I just don't. So, Greg, I hope that answers your question. Hazel, I think it's very obvious to me how serious you are about what you do, and the guest is most important. You're giving them a platform to give the facts about their loved one's disappearance out. Yeah, some people prefer entertainment over true crime. Yeah. It's just the way I look at things. Hazel, anytime I've seen a negative remark, I really have just thought the misread, the intention based on their own hurt and emotions. Could be. So, and I realize, and I realize maybe it can be seen as monotonous, being that we're doing disappearances every week. Some people might view that as monotonous, in contrast to Jon Lorden, who kind of course, mix it up. And many true crime channels and podcasts do mix it up. Generation Y, disappearance, serial killer, UFOs, all sorts of kind of different things, which I guess keeps it unique and a little fresh. But I also think that doing it that way, I don't know how much anybody's really learning. And to me, it's always about the learning. I'm here to inform and educate. And certainly disappearances are something that deserve that. So that's my answer, Greg. I hope that suffices, but it's a fantastic question. Fantastic question. All right, let's get to some of those other items that I've already mentioned tonight. This is just something that I came across. Hello, fishing. You're allowed to be late, fishing. I am not. This mysterious song. Have you ever heard this story? It is called The Most Mysterious Song to Ever Be Written. And I just speaking of one of those YouTube channels that I tune into on almost a daily basis. It's called Professor of Rock. And this was his video for today. There was a song that was played on the German public access or public radio channel back in 1984 that 40 years later, nobody seems to know who the band is. And you can actually find it on YouTube and listen to it. It's very 80s. It's very that techno style that was very popular in the early to mid 80s, like Human League or Flock of Seagulls, kind of groups like that. But 40 years later, nobody knows who the band is. And you listen to it, and at least to me, it doesn't sound like, and of course I grew up in the 80s, it doesn't sound like any band that I know. Now, if you want to look it up, it's called, it's mistakenly labeled Blind the Wind, when really what the singer is singing is Like the Wind. So if you were to do a YouTube search after we're done tonight, looking up this most mysterious song, just type in Blind the Wind, and you will hear the song. And what happened was some guy in Germany in the 1980s, he recorded the song off this radio station and never found out who the band is, even though it was sandwiched in like with Simple Minds and all these other groups that were very well known in 1984. This song came on. It was sandwiched within all these other songs. This person who recorded it off the radio onto a cassette never did pick up the actual title of the song or the band. And it now has its own Reddit thread and everything else as people try to figure out who the musicians and who the band is. It's a great mystery. If you've never heard of this story, you should look it up. It's fascinating, especially if you're into 80s music and that culture of that time. And I just got, being that I'm into music and 1980s culture, being that I grew up then and everything, it certainly caught my attention. But it just do a search for the most mysterious song and you will find it. And to me, there is a YouTube feel to it, although they don't sound like U2. But the guitar in it certainly has some U2 influence. U2, Bono and the rest, those guys. U2 influence. It's very British synth pop, although it very well may be that it's from another country. It could be some German band who's singing in English or something. It very well could be. But if you'd like to go down a rabbit hole for maybe the next month, maybe you can try to figure out who the band is. Just look up the most mysterious song. Let me see what everybody's saying here. Scooter, salute to the chat and to you, Unfound Podcast. I've got some info on a case uncovered. I'll have to try and reach out. Yes, Scooter, why don't you send me an email at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you. Hazel says, I've not heard this story about the song. I was very into Human League. Yeah, Human League, kind of the same thing at the time. Growing up in the UK, you need to check this out, Hazel. You need to check this out. Just do a search for the most mysterious song, and it's called Blind the Wind, but actually, if you listen to the song, the singer's saying, like the wind. Marty says, sound like the premise of the Lords of Salem. I'm not familiar with that. Scooter says 30 minutes from Salem. Stephanie, maybe the DJ slipping in a song from a friend's band that never became known. Stephanie, I think it's very intuitive. I love the thinking. I love that. It's outside the box. Keep it up. Rockford, a DJ sneaking. So once again, a DJ sneaking a friend's recording into the broadcast. So Stephanie and Rockford kind of going in the same direction. And yeah, listen to it after the show. Please do. Yeah, because it's about the Brian Cook case out of Boone County. Okay, well, I'll read whatever you want to send me, Scooter. I'm not sure until you send me something. I'm not sure what to think about that. So that's something for all of you to do in your spare time until the next live show next Monday. And certainly if any of you do listen to the song and watch the video, whether at the Professor of Rock channel or you just go to the YouTube channel where the song is playing, it's like 2.5 minutes long or something. Let me know what you think. Unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Email me or post in the chat after this video is done tonight. And tell me what you think about that band. What do you hear? What does it sound British? Is it American, German, Russian, French? What do you think about that song? All right, moving on. The killer of Rachel Morin has been caught. A suspect has been arrested in connection with the killing of Rachel Morin more than 10 months after a Maryland mother was found slain on a hiking trail in Harford County. Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez was arrested late on the Friday of June 14th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Morin, 37 years old, was found dead on August 6, 2023, a day after her boyfriend reported her missing, saying she had gone for a run on the Ma and Pa Trail in Bel Air, Maryland. Been there. She was found dead the next day when a search party volunteer discovered her along the trail. I think I went drag racing in Bel Air, Maryland once. At the press conference, Gawler thanked local and federal authorities for their work on the investigation. Rachel's homicide does not get solved. There's no arrest without all of us working together. Martinez Hernandez has also been linked to a home invasion in LA, during which a woman and child were attacked. A DNA link between Moren's killing and the home invasion was discovered in August 2023. And surveillance footage of the suspect from the LA home was released to the public before a subsequent sketch was released months later. The sheriff said Martinez Hernandez illegally entered the U.S. in February 2023, having left El Salvador, where he is accused of murdering a woman a month before. So he murdered a woman in El Salvador as well. Moren's mother, Patricia, briefly spoke at the press conference and thanked everyone who worked on the investigation. All right, so I guess, let's see. Martinez will face first-degree murder and rape charges in Maryland, but will first need to be extradited from Oklahoma, where he is currently in custody. So we have a killer who was in LA. He then went to Maryland, and then he was caught in Oklahoma. So first of all, I guess, at least for some people out there, this does rule out an Israel Keys type of person. Of course, Israel Keys is believed to have killed people all over the United States. You know how I highly debate that, but it was the question I asked that presenter, the true crime presenter, some months ago. She, unfortunately, in my opinion, buys into the idea that he killed many, many people that are still unsolved. I don't. But this is certainly not Israel Keys type. This was a guy who was just even violent, not some mysterious type, going back and forth, kind of living a regular life and then going out somewhere and raping a woman or killing a woman somewhere else. This is just a guy who, not here to get into the politics of it, but it wasn't supposed to be here, might have come to the United States because of the crime that he committed in El Salvador. He wants to get out of there, so he comes to the United States. We have 330 million people. He thinks he can hide amongst us, but the problem was when he came here, all his bad tendencies came here and came with him, and he continued what he was doing here. I guess what I'm also saying, it's safe to say that if he would have come to the United States and not done these crimes, that I don't know if El Salvador would have ever caught him, would have ever known where he was. So we have to keep that in mind. Now, having said that, I am, of course, open to the idea that there are other crimes that this guy has committed that they haven't pinned on him yet, but that doesn't mean that he's in Israel Keys type. This sounds to me like a guy that just not really planning anything out or anything, just a violent guy. Unlike Israel Keys, who many people believe, planned everything out and put tools of his trade in certain spots. This was not that type of guy. Now, the big question is, are we then to believe he was just hanging out there on the trail and this was a stranger on stranger encounter? I guess it was. He was just, I guess, very patient. And that may make it difficult for for police to really narrow down if he did commit other crimes, because we have to look at this. I don't know what the circumstances were, but it did say here he killed a woman in El Salvador. Although it doesn't say in this article. Maybe it says somewhere. What were the circumstances of that murder? But we really do have to contrast this between what he did in LA. So it's a break-in to somebody's house, raping a child, and doing some, I guess, other things while he was in there. But then on the other hand, with murdering Rachel, he actually was hanging out on a trail. So this wasn't like the original Night Stalker, who, what did he mostly do? Broke into people's houses, raped women, and eventually he became a murderer as well. This guy, it seems like, at least for now, he really didn't necessarily have what we would call a modus operandi. Breaks in over here, waits on a nature trail over, across the United States. This could make it tough to figure this all out. Now, I will tell you, and it does seem that I was wrong, that Well, given the way that Rachel, how do I put this? The way Rachel presented herself and on Instagram or Instagram account and elsewhere, and the things that she wrote and everything, I guess I was open to the idea, could she have been doing some, let's just say, work on the side? And could this have been something where this was something that she was planning to meet some guy and that went wrong? It seems like that was not the situation, although I don't know if there are any facts to rule that out. It says she was on a run. He was there, just happened to be there. He has attacked her. Maybe he was stalking her. This is one of those things, and I'm going to keep bringing it up, especially to women, that if you have a set pattern, if you are the type of person who exercises, whether it's running or walking or riding a bike out in public, out in the streets of wherever you are, and you kind of keep the same pattern, same type of day, same route on and over and over and over and over, I'm telling you, you may want to think about adding some variety to that. I think you should. I know it sucks. But if this is a situation where Rachel always went to that trail, certain time of day, ran a certain amount of time on particular days of the week, and this guy was in the area and figured that out, it very well maybe that's what happened. That he knew that she would be there on that day. She had caught his eye, no doubt about it. Rachel Morin, attractive woman, could have caught his eye for obvious straight male heterosexual reasons. And she caught his eye. He stalked her for a while, figured out that she always running on that trail at a certain time. And so he made a point to be there. No, I haven't read anything either way, but this is something that's on my mind regarding this. How he happened to choose that particular home in LA to do what he did, I don't know. Did he live in the area? Was he in the area? Did he happen to know somebody from who lived in that house? Did he encounter the daughter or something out on the street days before? I don't know. How did he know that he could break into that house but not the house next door? Hopefully, police will be able to figure these things out. The problem is, I don't think we're ever gonna know what those resolutions are. These are all things that are going through my mind regarding the catching of this guy. One Solve sounds a little Depeche Mode inspired. All right, so the Mysterious song, it does, but I don't think it's Depeche Mode. But I see where you're going with that. Marty says Lords of Salem, a Rob Zombie horror movie where a mysterious record shows up at a radio station. I see. Thanks to Oprum Labs. Yes. So great they got the guy. Sounds like a monster, a vile monster. Yeah. Amy says, touring the U.S. United States on his crime spree. Certainly. Hazel calls him an opportunist. Rockford says, in terms of trying to blend in, I'm not sure Oklahoma was his very best choice. Well, a lot of Hispanics and South American people out there, Rockford. I don't know. I'm certainly not an expert on Oklahoma. I've just driven through it a couple times. Opposed to Key assumes it seems revolved his life around his evil ventures. Yeah. Sad reality, Hazel says we have to be careful. We do. I even think about that myself. Being that the patterns that I have in my life now, granted, I don't have many patterns. Really, I mean, everybody knows I don't have to bring it out. The only real pattern I have in my life is trivia on Wednesdays. Everything else, as far as going out in public, is totally random, except for that. Was there footage of him leaving someone's house that night, no shirt on or something? That's right, Cranky. You're getting that. Yes, that's true. You're thinking of the right. You're thinking of the correct criminal. You are. All right, before I don't want to leave this hanging, I want to answer this other question from Jennifer. And if you're in the chat, welcome. As for questions, do you or any of the community know a program, video, or article about the history of scent dogs in criminal investigations? What I mean is, every time I search for the history or information on how they became a tool for law enforcement, all I find are groups that provide the service or train the dogs, not rolling way back to the history. If you know anything about that, would love your thoughts. I really don't, Jennifer. I really don't. It's fascinating, though. I have to admit, never really even thought about getting into that. Given that I've spoken about it so many times, maybe I should. I think, Jennifer, I will say on the other hand, what I have looked into just because is like the history between humans and dogs. How is it that humans and dogs became so close to each other? Why is that? When did that happen? Why did that happen? And of course, it goes back thousands of years. We know that going back to Egypt, that dogs were a part of that civilization. In fact, dogs were worshipped. And we know that, for example, cats were seen as like guardians of the underworld. And the Egyptians, certainly, what would that be, like 5,000 years ago or something now? That even back then, 5,000 years ago, there was this connection between humans and certain animals that went beyond just using them as tools, like camels or horses, like to do work, or oxen or something like that. There were particular animals that were seen as special for whatever reason. And so the connection between humans and animals and being around them and them us living with them goes back a long way. And I'm guessing, can only guess, Jennifer, that at some point within all of that, humans recognized that dogs have sensory perception that we don't, especially when it comes to their noses. And it kind of just went from there. Now, how eventually that got into crime solving and when that became a thing, I'm guessing that became much more of a thing maybe like in the 1800s for whatever reason. Why did it take so long? I don't know. That's my perception. Well, why, if they were around dogs so back then, why did it take 4,000 years? Maybe it was just never relevant. Did they were there murders in ancient Egypt? Did they investigate them? Did they try to figure out who caused them? I don't know. When I start thinking about crimes being solved, murders being actually what we would call investigated, my perception is this is something that is very new to humans being on this earth. I don't know if they were investigating murders in the year 1000 AD. I don't know. But I do know that murders got investigated in the 1800s in London. So somewhere in there, it became a concern. And then somehow it figured out maybe dogs can help us with this. So it's a fascinating question. I hope somebody's going to actually, I don't know if I'm going to have the time to do it, but I'm hoping somebody can start to look that up and maybe post something in the discussion group on Facebook, some history of that and when dogs started to be used in criminal investigations. You already know how I feel about some of this as far as disappearances go. Dogs are very inaccurate, unreliable. We talk about dogs so much, but we also know how much they fail. And I will, if we want to go at least a little teeny weeny bit into Cookville, I do have some concerns about dogs that are used for sniffing out drugs and everything. I've brought it up before and I'll bring it up again. Are we sure that we aren't just using dogs to get around search and seizure laws? Are we sure that's not happening? I wonder. Let me see what everybody's saying. We do know your thoughts on use of dogs in solving crimes. They get it right once in a while, Hazel, but it's certainly not scientific. It's like polygraph tests. I worship my darling diddle dog. I bet you do, Hazel. I bet you do. Everybody worships their dogs. I don't have any. I love animals. Animals love me. I just don't have any patience. I'm not going to walk a dog every day. I'm not going to go up there and pick up its poop and everything. That is just not me. I love dogs. And I love talking to, when I'm about disc golfing and somebody is on the path over a Taylor with the dog, I'll go over and be friendly. I'll talk to the dog and stuff. But as far as taking care of them, I have no patience. Zero. All right, let's get back. I want to talk about Pamela Smart. I think this might be, given how infamous she is, it's amazing, I think, that this live show has gone this long, and I've never discussed her before, although it wasn't a disappearance, but still. Sniffer dogs are used at some airports as part of the security check. Now, I know, Stephanie. Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen them. I know, Stephanie. Big question marks in my mind. All right. Pamela Smart is in the news. Pamela Smart says she has acknowledged for the first time that she is responsible for her husband's murder after decades of deflecting blame with warped logic. I don't really know if she's responsible. I think that's really a stretch. I found myself responsible for something I desperately didn't want to be responsible for, my husband's murder, Smart said in a videotaped message from prison. This a revelation, she said, came in a prison writing class where her instructor pushed the group to dig deeper in my own mind, in my own heart. Smart, now 56, has spent nearly 34 years behind bars as part of a life sentence without parole for her role in Gregory Smart's 1990 murder. The killing was carried out by 4 teenagers led by one boy who was having an affair with Pamela Smart. In May 1990, Billy Flynn, who was 16 at the time, fired a shot through Gregory Smart's head as Patrick Randall, then 17, held a knife to his throat. Pamela Smart, who was 22 at the time, and Flynn's program instructor in Hampton, New Hampshire, I didn't know this happened in New Hampshire, interesting, high school, was sneaking around with Flynn. During the trial, Flynn testified that Pamela threatened to break up with him if he didn't kill her husband. Flynn, Randall, and 2 other teenagers at the time, who were the getaway drivers, served their sentences, have since been freed. If you don't know that, like it just read here, all 4 of these kids are free men now and actually have been out there in the public for quite a while now. Years, like a decade at least. It has taken me decades, but she's still behind bars. It has taken me decades to come to a place where I can more fully understand and accept responsibility for my inexcusable actions and behaviors, Pamela wrote in a March letter to New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu, where she pleads for a pardon. So 34 years later, she's still in jail, and the 4 guys, the one of which who pulled the trigger, are out. And in fact, Billy Flynn, the guy who pulled the trigger, who was actually having the affair with Pamela Smart, I think he's married and has kids now. You know, this is how much time has passed. Now, what do I think about this? First, I want to say something. Let me see here. I knew it had been a while since I had seen any of the pictures or anything, but I'm here to tell this William Flynn kid, back when this happened, it's really weird. Remember, this happened in 1990, so this would have been right around my age range. Pamela Smart is only 2 to 3 years older than I am, and William Flynn, Billy Flynn, when this happened, was only 4 years younger than I was at the time. But it is crazy how much Billy Flynn, the guy who's having the affair, who pulled the trigger, and he admitted it, looks like a kid that went to high school with me, and he's one of the worst people who I've ever known. His name is Aaron Sinka, and he's dead now. I think he committed suicide, I think. But he was in my class in high school. And like I said, I've known a lot of people in my life. Aaron Sinka is probably the worst person I've ever known. Easily. And I actually went to high school. Another kid in my class ended up being a murderer. He ended up murdering a guy in like 2014. His name is Chris Patterson. He was no treat either in high school, but Aaron Sinka was certainly worse. Horrible, horrible guy. But I think, like I said, I think he committed suicide or overdosed or something like about 10 to 12 years ago. Pretty sure. But it's amazing how Billy Flynn and this kid who was in my high school class look alike. It's creepy. And being that they are both pretty bad guys, I do see, I'm seeing that. It's just really weird. Now, as far as Pamela Smart being guilty, I understand why they convicted her, but like I said, I'm not an expert on this, and I can just imagine. I mean, can you imagine if this would have happened during the internet age or the social media age? How crazy it would have made all of the coverage of Karen Reed and everything look like a one-day thing. Now, I think the way I look at it now is that I think the reason this got so much attention is because it was a female teacher with a boy. Whereas that was really seen at the time as being really, really, really like a one-off, never happens. Where, as you know, if you pay attention to these things, it seems like every month we have a story like this with some female teacher having an affair with some underage boy, some 15-year-old or 16-year-old. And even here in 2024, my perception is the culture, at least in the United States, doesn't, even though we know it is, doesn't see that as big a deal as when an adult male teacher is having an affair with a 14 or 15-year-old girl. Right? But these days, that just shows you, to me, how much things have changed in 35 years. Pamela Smart, she was like this one-off thing back then. These days, we see Pamela Smarts all the time, except, of course, still, with Pamela Smart, somebody ended up getting murdered. Some of the points that came to mind, being that she's back in the news, is it is interesting to me that she just happened to be having a relationship with the one kid who could be manipulated into killing her husband. I wonder if this was her plan from the start. That she really, really, really wasn't into Billy Flynn. She wasn't really necessarily attracted. I know it's sick. I know. She wasn't really attracted to him from a sexual point of view. But she was attracted to him because she knew that she could get him to do something that she wanted. So it wasn't, so the murder idea didn't come after for her. It came before. She wanted to get her husband out of her life, and she was looking for somebody, some boy, some guy who would do it for her. I think this is something that we have to be open to, simply because what are the odds? Because there's never been any allegations that she ever had any other affairs with any other boys at that school. Just Billy Flynn. So what are the odds that she just, the first time she does this, she just happens to find a kid who would do this for her? Something that's, she got it right the first time. I also have to really question, is it fair that she's still in jail and all those guys are out? I will tell you, as a guy, I'm much more, and I'm not afraid of much, but just looking at this from a legal point of view and a society culture point of view, I'm much more afraid of those four guys being out than I would be of her being out. I realize that she's in jail because she was allegedly the person who got this whole thing started and everything, but they were the ones who went about doing this. And there is something about it that doesn't seem right to me. It's like they all should still be in jail, or she should be out of jail with them too. I realize this is totally offensive to Gregory Smart's family. I get it. And really, when it comes down to it, I would rather still have them all in jail and, of course, all of them out of jail. What doesn't make any sense to me is these guys have been out of jail for like 10 years and she's still in jail. And I have to tell you that even though I can certainly believe that maybe at one or two times she might have said to Billy Flynn, it'd be so great if my husband was out of the picture so you and I could be together. Would not be an uncommon statement. But the issue is that it wasn't like she planned this out. She didn't give them the gun. The gun came from somewhere else. So how much of the planning did she actually do herself? This is a big question in my mind. And this is one of those things where, and I realize there's this Cecilia Pierce who got her on tape that, what Pamela said to the police was different than what she said to Cecilia, on and on and on. I get it. I'm just not convinced that she was as big an instigator of this as the prosecution made it out to be. Because we have examples, of course, we have, Dan Markel, who got murdered, where there certainly was a lot of planning put into it. The murder of Gregory Smart was not that. It wasn't. So I even have it in my notes. So what exactly is the definition of planned? I know this is like legal speak or something. When does something go from planned to unplanned? When does something go from putting an idea in somebody's head to something being planned? How much did Pamela Smart have to be in the process for her to be termed the planner of it when we know she didn't even provide the gun? And there's no proof, at least that I could find, that she knew any of these guys even had access to a gun. So was it planned or was not planned? It seems to me that anybody could have figured out when Greg Smart was home and when he wasn't. They wouldn't have needed her to do that. And just because there's pillow talk of, there's wherever they used to do their rendezvous, and it's pillow talk of, Billy, you and I could be together if my husband wasn't around. Is that the hatching of a plan, or is that just pillow talk? And if Billy would have went and did this with his friends on the basis of just that, did Pamela Smart really put this all in motion? Now, if she'd have gone, she could be connected to the gun, if there was proof that she told them that she wouldn't be home on this certain day and he would be, then that's certainly different. There's nothing that I could find that any of that was established. All they could prove was that she lied to the police about certain things. And of course, who wouldn't want to hide that she was having an affair with a boy and everything? This is just kind of what I got out of reading about all of this over the last couple of days. Now, reading what she said, recently, and this is the reason I'm talking about this, does it sound like she's remorseful? I guess not, but in her mind, she maybe still thinks, I didn't plan this. Certainly feel horrible that it happened. I shouldn't have had an affair with Billy Flynn and all of this stuff, but I didn't plan this. So I'm wondering, I know some of you know more about this than I do, but this is just, like I said, I went back and read some articles from the time. I, of course, read the Wikipedia page. I read several articles that have been written about her recently because she's getting some attention now and everything. Are we sure those 4 guys shouldn't be in jail anymore? Are we sure? I'm not. Like I said, I think what makes more sense to me is that all of them should still be in jail for the murder of Greg Smart. Them, the actual killers being out and her being in when she didn't pull the trigger and everything seems a little bizarre to me. So, let's see what's Hazel says, can't come into New Zealand with even a loan app on your bag. Yeah, they want to, because they're afraid of disease and everything. I know that. Yes, right. I've seen shows and idea about Pamela Smart years ago. Not surprised by this recent admission. It was a crazy story for sure. Rockford. Every time I hear this topic, I think of South Park. I know some of you know what I mean. Rockford, I'm going to shock you with this, but I've never seen one episode of South Park. Stephanie, I think that someone willing to have that sort of relation may be prone to being manipulative in general, but who knows? Certainly. Of course, this is one of those things, Stephanie. I'm glad you brought that up. Of course, in our legal system, at least in the United States, underage people cannot enter into contracts. In addition, underage people of a certain age cannot, no matter if they say yes to sex or not, that is considered to be illegal. The defense, if you're an adult and you have a sexual relationship, you have sex with a 13-year-old, your defense can't be, well, she wanted to do it with me. That's not a defense here in the United States. Maybe in some other countries it is. It isn't here. But we also have to realize that 13, 14, 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds have free will. I realize adults shouldn't be doing this. I think it's horrible. I think it should be illegal and everything else. I think these people should be labeled sex predators, on and on and on and on and on. But we also have to remember that 13, 14, these underage kids, they have free will too. They know the right difference between right and wrong. And are they really being forced? Was Billy Flynn really forced into doing this? I know what he says. Well, if I didn't do this, she wasn't going to have sex with me anymore. Is that enough of a motivation to excuse his actions? Hazel South Park is hilarious. Hazel says, I don't think the court of public opinion should determine if someone should be available for parole. I think those with more knowledge and experience should make those decisions. Sorry. Yeah, I think those with more knowledge and experience should, I guess. No. Ask any of you. Would you want Billy Flynn living next to any of you? And by the way, he hasn't changed his name or anything. Once saw, in my opinion, 14-year-olds are not of the age of consent, nor do they fully understand the consequences of their actions. One solved, a 14-year-old doesn't understand the the consequences of pulling a trigger and firing a bullet into another human's brain? They need to rethink a child molester usage, Deborah says. You know, just something about it. Like I said, I realized, I mean, I can fairly take care of myself and everything. I wouldn't want Billy Flynn living next to me knowing that he murdered somebody. 30. I don't care if it was 10 years ago or 40 years ago. Under the flimsiest reason that, well, if I didn't do this, she wasn't going to have sex with me anymore. Now, she manipulated him. I get it. We get all caught up in these emotions and everything. But don't know. And it's just not clear to me as I have it. What is the definition of planned? And when did this planning happen? And was it she who involved all these other guys, or was it Billy Flynn who involved all these other guys? So if she says it to Billy, you know what? I wish you would kill my husband. Was it then she, Pamela Smart, as well, who got all these other people involved? Probably not. It was Billy Flynn who got them involved. So at what point does he become the ringleader of this? Like I said, I think all of them should still be in jail. I'm not trying to excuse her. I'm not saying she should be out of jail. I think what makes more sense is that they should all be in jail. And I think that there should be more dispersing of the responsibility in all of this. Whereas obviously, being that she's still in jail and they're out, they're putting all the responsibility with her. Whereas the way I see it, the responsibility for Greg Smart, I don't care how old these kids were, should be more spread out, and they should all be in jail. Certainly they understood what they were doing. And these other guys, the only one of them was having sex with her, right? So what is the motivation for all these other kids? You know. If they've reformed, I'd be open. I don't know if reform, Hazel. Not all people fall under call a child molester name to me. There's a difference, Rockford. I'd be good with him being in jail. He could get manipulated again, right? I just don't think it's that clear cut. Just something about it. Just something about it. Now that I've had, like I said, I really did not take a big interest in it when it was hot news at the beginning of the 90s. But just reading these things over the last couple of days, and you start going through the process, well, how did this all happen? It just came to me more and more that I think Billy Flynn was way more in on the organizing and everything. He was not a helpless bystander in all this. I mean, he's the one that found those other guys to go do this with him. Now, if he just did it by himself, okay. But he didn't. Let's move on to this. I only have a few more minutes. Jon Benet Ramsey. Jon Benet Ramsey's outraged father broke 27 years of silence and blamed buggling Boulder, Colorado cops for letting his precious 6-year-old daughter get away. The grief-haunted 80-year-old dad insisted local police rejected his repeated pleas to have the FBI analyze DNA found on the girl's corpse, and recently accused the incompetent department of losing the last biological evidence linked to the crime. I have no other reason to explain logically why they wouldn't test it or allow another agency to test it, Jon Ramsey said. Unfortunately, that is a suspicious I have. They've been very reluctant to tell us anything. It's a very strange environment. It's not strange. Police like that. For 27 years, we've been trying to get them to accept help and give the DNA evidence to the FBI. I'm afraid the only illogical reason that they won't commit to testing it anymore is because they lost it. I hope I'm wrong. And we know Jon Benet Ramsey was discovered the morning of December 26th. We all know what happened there. A broken cellar window, an unknown DNA found on the child pointed to an intruder, but Boulder cops have refused John's demands that the FBI and other scientifically advanced agencies be brought into the probe. He claimed to have recently spoken to the current Boulder police chief, who purportedly said they couldn't reveal what was happening with the case. The angry father also complained at a National Crime Con gathering that the FBI wouldn't take over a probe unless the local police chief made the request. That's true. Investigative reporter Paula Woodward. There's nothing that explains the behavior for 27 years. Yes, there is. They simply won't share information, she claimed. They won't ask for help, and currently what they're doing is they refuse to give a small amount of DNA that they left over to a competent lab for genealogy testing. They refuse to do it. Here's what I have to say about that. Has the DNA really not been tested? I know that's what they say, but has it not? I don't know. I don't know. In addition, and this is so good because at least in a few weeks from now, I'm going to be interviewing an FBI agent for Unfound. It should be interesting. But we have to remember, the FBI is not a cure-all. You know, they're not superheroes. It's not the cure-all that everyone thinks it is. We've talked about the FBI at least a few times on Unfound. Those disappearances where we've talked about them, those disappearances are still unsolved. You know, here's what I don't really know. Like I said, I know some of you are way better educated on her murder and all that. And I realize many people think the mother did it, the father did it, they did it together. Was it the brother? A few years ago, he was out there, people talking about how he might have murdered Jon Benet, and they covered it up on and on and on and on and on. Looking at it from a disappearance point of view, we have to realize that how rare, if she went missing, say Jon Benet Ramsey went missing, there was proof that somebody allegedly, or maybe it was staged, broke in and abducted her. We have to realize it's rare, but it does happen. Right, Elizabeth Smart. It does happen. So we could think of a scenario where somebody did break in. And maybe the plan was to abduct her, but instead something went wrong and the person decided, oh, she's seen my face, I'm going to have to kill her. It's at least conceivable. I don't know how possible it is. You know, what if Jon Benet Ramsey had disappeared? I don't think that it would be any different than given she was murdered. You automatically go to the parents. Why? Because statistically, that's usually a pretty good place to go. No, I don't know. Let me see what everybody's saying here, being that we're just about to the end here, and I'm gonna have to wrap this up. People at age 15 are different when they are mature adults. So, yeah, sexual predator is a better name in my opinion, Deborah says. One solved. Two of the Sun Boulder that have been hindering the case since 1996 are currently second and third command there today. Child molester to me means a child 1 to 13. Boulder PD claims they are waiting for the DNA testing technology to advance even more. Two doors found ajar that morning. So I believe cops effed it up big time. Poor little Jon Benet Ramsey's case. Okay. My point is just that him getting all crazy about the FBI needing to be involved. And when I get to interview this FBI agent, I'm certainly going to ask her. I'm just not convinced that would have made any difference over the years. There's no proof that them getting involved fixes anything. But on the other hand, I've heard an FBI agent say that we wanted to get involved, but the local police didn't want us to be involved because they were afraid we'd solve it and make them look bad. So there's that. Maybe that's what's going on in Boulder these days. No footprints in the snow, yet there was hardly any snow on the southwest corner of the home where the infamous window well was located. Obviously, once all of you know a lot about this. Well, that's all I got. I've run out of time tonight. So this Friday, little bit up in the air right now. I'm supposed to do an interview tomorrow night, but this is an interview that has got moved twice so far. I'm hoping that it will happen tomorrow night, and that will be Friday's episode. It will be a new disappearance. And I'm really looking forward to interviewing this person. But like I said, we've had to move it twice. I hope it doesn't get moved a third time, because if it does, then we're not going to have time to put it all together for Friday. So if that doesn't happen, we'll be doing a revisitation episode this Friday, and the one that I've been talking about. And I haven't quite picked out the old disappearance, the old episode that I'm going to re-air. But it won't be a surprise. I promise, if we need to go in that direction on Friday, that you will know about it before Friday gets here. So I don't have a disappearance to tell you about at the end here, but we'll figure out something for Friday. Fingers crossed. A couple more things. MT Rockford, agreed, Hazel. I don't see the evidence is all wrong for that scenario. MT, I think Colorado PD could do more to solve Jon Benet Ramsey's case. And I will keep my opinion to myself. Kathy Rockford in another podcast, it looks like it was an intruder and possibly been identified. That was FBI agent Ron Walker, who suspected the family from day one. Hazel, look at all the accusers of Maddie McCain's parents, some scenario. Rockford, Kathy, yes. CZ had an interesting series on it, too, around Christmas last year. You're welcome, Lisa. And all right, so I'm closing this all. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Have you given your thumbs up yet? Please consider joining below to the channel. And thank you for giving this show tonight some of your time on your Monday night. I hope you're all doing well. And I know I didn't get some things. We didn't get to the Steve Pankey letters. That's fine. We'll get to them next week, given that I have a lot to go over anyway. And I should have stated Aiden Clune, there was news there that another search found Aiden's shoes out there. You can find the news on the Facebook group in there, and that's it. Maybe I'll talk more about Aiden Clune and that discovery next week. I'm sure it'll get here very fast. Good night, everyone. Keep your heads on swivels if you could. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. Good night.